to the Hitchhiker's Guide for Credit Repair. My name's Dinty. Today we're going to be talking about getting your first home. So most of us will have never gotten a home before, never purchased a home before. If we did and got foreclosed on, and this really doesn't apply to you, but if you haven't, let's talk about the best way to do that. So we're now, about 36 months in, right? We've now gotten 24 months to build our credit to get the car. We've had the car for a year. Now we can get the mortgage. Now, finding a house is tough, especially right now. I'm going to tell you, I'll give you a couple of tips to find one, but you might not be able to find one, and that's just too bad. You might have to wait until the market cools a little bit, which I think it's going to soon. But here's the problem. As interest rates go up, you can afford less house. So that's the problem with the real estate market is right now it's just overinflated, and you have to make a lot of money to qualify to buy the house you want, and you probably don't. So you're probably going to have to get a house you don't like as much, but we'll talk about that. All right, so let's first talk about choosing a bank to get your mortgage at. If you're getting an FHA loan, the qualifications are fairly straightforward. FHA lenders pretty much have to follow all the same guidelines. And if they do, and they sell you the house, and then you get foreclosed on, don't make payments, then the federal government will cover the difference between what they sell the house for and what it was worth, so they don't lose money. That's the way FHA works. Plus, they will give you a better interest rate and some other advantages, but that's the primary one. For that, you pay private mortgage insurance, which is a couple $100s a month, and that's added on to whatever your house costs. So that's great. So let's talk about how much you need to make to buy a house, because you're going to have to prove it. There's no not proving it right now. So if you're a regular person with a regular job, and you get a paycheck, you can probably buy a $125,000 house if you make $3,500 a month. And that's serious. I'm serious about that. You don't have to worry about, you don't have to make a lot of money to buy a house. It's just got to be the right structure. It's going to be the right amount of money in right sources, okay? And that's great. But if you're self-employed, then you're going to have had a couple of years of tax returns, at least 2, and sometimes want 3. A couple of years of tax returns proving that you paid on X amount of income, and that is your total net income. It's not fair. You're right, because I'm a sole proprietor and I'm self-employed, and a lot of what I make goes back into my business, but I still use that thing to live on, right? Like my car, for example. But it doesn't matter because this is the way the banks look at it. So if you're self-employed, you're going to be at a big disadvantage. You can still do it, though. It's still possible. Credit requirements. If you followed the steps I've told you to take, credit requirements can be no problem for you because it's only about 630 most of the time, sometimes as much as 650, but never more than that. And the interest rate's the same. You just have to qualify. Okay? The interest rate's always going to be better than almost everybody else's interest rate, which is great. If you want to take the easy way out to get a more expensive house, and you want to go with a non-conventional mortgage, and you want to use your bank statements to prove your income, you're going to pay an interest rate of 5% higher than anybody else, and you're probably going to get foreclosed on. You're probably not going to be able to afford that house. That's your business. But you have to have a 740 beacon and perfect credit to do that. So where we're at right now, if you don't qualify for an FHA mortgage because you've already got an FHA mortgage foreclosed on, or you've already had a house in your name, then I'm sorry, but this does not apply to you. Same with veterans. VA benefits, that's a whole different thing, and you get a great benefit for being in the service. And if you guys are considering whether you should go into service, you get an outstanding VA benefit when you're going to buy your home. Unfortunately, that's something that we're not going to talk about today either, although thank you for your service. Let's go on. With respect to the FHA loan, you're only going to have to put down 3%, I believe. That's what it was when I did it. And so that's pretty good, right? But that's where the good part ends. So let's talk about the process. First of all, I want to tell you, the process to buying your first home on FHA mortgage is 3 to 5 months. Don't let anybody tell you different. That's what it is, okay? It's not 2 months. It's not 2.5 months. You can't speed it up. Now, your banker might say you can, because your banker doesn't want you to walk over next door and all that effort he's put into it, or she, is wasted by the fact that you've decided to change lenders. You could do that. Why would you want to put yourself through this again? But if you really do, if you're really, for some reason that banker just is I mean, you saw him buying crack on the corner. Okay, fine. Yeah, get another mortgage lender. But honestly, it doesn't really matter that much. So, before you go shopping for any houses for any price, you're going to have to get a pre-approval letter from your lender. Making an offer on a house without a pre-approval letter from your lender is silly. Don't even bother. So you got to get that done. You got to do that based upon the income you have today. So like I say, $36,000, you're going to have maybe afford a $125,000 house. Okay, if you have double that, so it'd be $2,000. You could probably afford a $260,000 house. If you make over $100,000, $400,000 house. That's where you're at. There are no shortcuts to this. Just because a house you want is not a house you can afford. Again, just like the car, doesn't make any difference. You can afford what the bank tells you can afford. That's it. And that's the problem with getting a mortgage with housing prices being what they are today. So, you got to find a house. You got to put down an offer on it, and then you have to have a seller who's going to be willing to wait 3 to 5 months before they get their check for that house. So it's a problem, right? I mean, sometimes you can buy a house for an institution. Like, for example, they moved an employee to another state, and then the employee couldn't sell their house, and so the company had to buy it. Now they're selling it. They might wait that period of time. You have people who are moving into assisted living. They might wait for that period of time. But the best thing to do is if the house you're living in is a rental, and you're ready to buy that house, when the market's favorable for you, and you tell your landlord you want to buy it, they'll usually sell it to you, and they don't care because you're still paying rent during this period, so it doesn't matter to them, right? So that's what's happening. First problem is the amount of time. The second problem is the fact that when you get that offer put in, you're going to have to put the amount of closing and your down payment in a bank account, and you have to leave it in the bank account. You can't touch it, because if you do, your closing date will go away. And let me explain to you how exactly this works. 3% of a $200,000 house is $6,000. That's a good amount. But then we've got another problem. Now we've got another $3,000 to $10,000 in closing costs, depending on where you are, how much your house is, a dozen different things. Let's shoot in the middle, say it's $5,000. So now you're going to have in your bank account, to buy a $200,000 house, you're going to have $11,000. And it's going to have to stay in your bank account. So this whole 3 to 5 month process, right? So do you have $11,000? Because I know I don't. Most people don't. So here's how you get around that. When you negotiate the deal, you ask the seller to pay closing costs, and you offer them enough more so that is covered. Now, you can't go crazy on this because there is an appraisal, and the appraisal's tight on an FHA mortgage. Plus, there's an inspection, right? So, if there are repairs negotiated into the sales contract, you can't just back those repairs out if it's an FHA, because usually they're in there to satisfy the requirements of the FHA inspection, right? So, the best thing to do is to talk to the seller, say, look, I'll pay you X dollars more, we can split it, whatever it is, but I'll pay you more so I can get closing costs included in the sale. And if you do that, then you don't have to worry about having that $11,000. Now you can just have the $6,000 in the bank. Most people are going to do this. Now, listen, real estate agents, God bless them. Most of them aren't Mensa members. I hate to say it. I have a lot of opinions about real estate agents, commercial and residential. I'm going to withhold those right now. I'm sure you're all great people, but here's the thing. Your real estate agent will frequently give you bad advice, almost universally. What they tell you is almost always wrong. What they tell you is typical is rarely typical. So what you need to do is you need to pay attention, do your homework, watch this video, watch other videos, read the FHA literature online. They've got a ton of it. They got more PDFs than you can count. Take a look at all that stuff and pay attention. And just remember this. You need to have the seller pay the closing costs, or you got to have a lot of money. Now, maybe, Aunt Hattie died and she left you $20,000 and you got the money to put in the bank. That's great if you have that. But if you don't, this is the way you can deal with that problem. Now you're going to have to deal with the investigation, which is not just checking your credit. Not that easy. They're going to look at everything you might have ever done, every bounce check, every judgment, everything, right? If you have any judgment on file for you in any court in the country, you're going to have to satisfy that judgment, and not just satisfy the court, but also satisfy the plaintiff and get receipts from both and have it in writing, or you're not going to get the loan. So you can't do that. I can tell you right now, I had to do it. I had 2 judgments in Jackson County, Missouri that I found out, about 3 days from my first closing, which, by the way, I think I had 5 closings before I finally closed. So, but 3 days from my first closing, they found these judges. They said, you got to satisfy these now, or we're going to have to push the closing date back. And at this point, I was already afraid the lender was, my landlord was going to say, oh, I'll just sell the house to somebody else, right? So I said, okay, that's fine. I'll do that. So I took the money I had for my rent and my car payment for that month and prayed to God I could get it back somehow. And I went and paid those judgments. And then I got the receipts and I scanned them and I sent them into the bank. And I said, oh, no. You have to pay the plaintiff back. I said, well, in Jackson County, you have to pay the county back, and then the county pays the plaintiff. Or doesn't pay the plaintiff. They've got some weird system where the plaintiff has to somehow know through osmosis that you've paid the judgment, and then if they ask for the judgment within a very short period of time, like 90 days or something, then they'll get their money. Otherwise, the good taxpayers of Jackson County get to keep the money from your debt. But that's neither here nor there. That's how it works. It's not fun. It's going to be a wear out. It's going to cost you. You're going to have to you're going to have to leave your job in the middle of the day several times during this period. There's going to be a lot going on. Okay, the word I can't or I won't cannot exist in your vocabulary during this 3 to 6 month period, because it's going to be a wear out. So you finally get to that point. Your first closing day comes up. It's not going to happen on your first closing day. 25 days later, your second closing date comes up. Most of the time it will close on that day, but in my case, I had 5 closing days. So it all depends. But the point is that when you go look at your house, first of all, you're married to that house, because you don't want to go through this again, right? Once you're a month and a half or 2 months into this process, you're not going to go switch houses because you just want to get this done. So when going back to looking at the house, now that you know all this information, this arms you with better information on how to look. The house has to be move-in, live-in condition. In other words, it has to have, it can't have soft floors from a flood. It can't have, torn up carpet. It can't have a lot of holes in the walls. It can't have a leaky roof. It can't have a bad furnace, or a furnace needs replacement, or a hot water heater that needs replacement. Air conditioning you don't care about. It can't have an old stove that smells like there's gas leaking out of it. None of these things can exist. So you're either going to have to work with the seller to get those rectified before the inspection, or the inspection's not going to be valid. And I know that everybody's thinking to themselves, well, there's ways around this, right? I mean, because nobody has a house for the amount I'm going to qualify for my mortgage, so surely there's a shortcut, there's a way around it. And the answer is, there is not. There is not. You're just going to have to work it out. It's not going to be easy. If you have a motivated seller and a motivated buyer, you guys are going to get that worked out. Otherwise, maybe not. And that's the hard thing about buying a house. But the best thing to do, the absolute easiest way to do this, is to rent a house you like, okay? And once you've been at that house, for a little while, because you'll qualify to rent it after you buy that first car. And now your credit's be good enough to qualify for almost anything in the rental market. You're going to rent that house, and after a while, you offer to buy it back from the owner. And of course, it goes without saying, if you buy a house owned by a big property management company, chances are they're not going to sell it to you. So you're better off buying it from a real estate agent who's a person, right? A business owner, somebody you can actually call and talk to. Okay, so that's the best way to do it, right? Now, I want to talk a little bit about shortcuts, because we talked about CarMax and Carvana in the last one. I want to talk about shortcuts here. Buying a condo, not really a good idea, because here's what happens with a condo. The condo owner will wait because there's probably 50 condos. They're exactly the same in that same complex, so they'll wait forever. They don't care until they run out of condos. They'll wait for you, and once you move into that condo, yeah, you own the condo, but do you really? You don't really own the land the condo's on, do you? And you don't, and you got to pay these common maintenance fees, which are going to go up every year. And so by the time you've lived in that house and paid off your mortgage, your common maintenance fees are going to far exceed that mortgage anyway. And you're still going to pay property taxes on property you don't even really own. This is probably not your best bet. And if you have to go that route, wait. Okay, wait. Rent an apartment. Don't get that. And this is the same for any kind of product like this. Urban lofts, okay? Converted spaces. I mean, yes, you can get a loan on these. You can get FHA, I think. But regardless, they're not really going to accomplish what you need. Because what you really want is you want something that's going to guarantee that you always have access to quick, inexpensive capital to do what you need to do. Improve your house. Send your kid to college. Go on that vacation. You want that. And if you want that, you got to own a house. Because in America, that's the way we do it here. There are really no shortcuts. If you own a house, you have access to this whole new world of credit and commerce that you won't have access to otherwise. So owning a house is really important. Now, going back to the car. Will the Corolla get you from here to there? Sure it will. Will the house, keep you safe and warm and cold in the summer and provide you with a place to sleep that's safe and all that good stuff? Yes, that's really the requirement. So just look at it like that, okay? Now, can you buy another house? I mean, you can. But you're probably much better off making the changes to your house so it'll make it more livable. It's really hard to buy and sell a house. And I'm not even going to go into that. I'm sure there's plenty of other videos on there. But there you go. So that's how you get your first house. Now, moving forward, this is going to end this first three-part introduction. But moving forward, when you get the house, you can get whatever car you want at this point now. You'll get, the great interest rate financing, the 0% they always advertise. You're going to be able to get a credit card with a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 limit. Those will come to you after you own this house. So the house is the end of the road. It's where we want to be. And so that's what I'm talking about today. Get a house. This is Dinty. This has been the Hitchhiker's Guide to Credit Repair. And we'll talk to you next time.